Okay, so this is part 2 in our ongoing series entitled How to Cultivate Humility, a Quest for Practical Guidelines. And the subheading for today in the announcement was the Abravanel's 7 strategies, okay? But we're only going to focus on 2 because there's a lot to do here. And I only didn't write that in the title because I wasn't sure how many we were going to do until like 5 minutes ago when I finished preparing. Okay, so what we're going to do is, so just to review the objectives in case this is the first time someone's listening to the series. There are 2 goals. Really the secondary goal is to understand anava, humility, on a theoretical level. What is it? But then the primary goal, the impetus for the shiur, was to understand anava on a practical level, meaning how can we become humble? We noted that, unquestionably in Judaism, then there is Torah is pro-humility and anti-gaiva, anti-haughtiness. But the question is, how can we actually become that? By the way, is the screen sharing? Because I'm getting a weird thing on my Zoom. We're good? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. So today's objectives are, number 1, we're going to start with a recap of last time. We are then not going to answer the questions we raised last time. Okay. At least that's not what we're going to set out to do systematically. Okay. And that was by design. All right. I'll explain in a second. Instead, we're going to learn the Abravanel's 7 strategies. Again, really just 2 of them for combating the 7 types of gaiva. And what we're going to do is assess the degree to which these strategies shed light on our questions. In other words, just to go into a little bit of the history of the shiur, is I had read those Rambams we did, last time. I'd read them many times and thought about them and analyzed them. And the whole drive for this series was I wanted to find a new approach. And then I stumbled upon this Abravanel. And as you'll see today, it is such a radical departure from anything I've ever seen in terms of how to cultivate humility that, like, I want to learn it on its own and then just see whether answers to those questions fall into place. If you're interested in how I would answer the questions on the Rambam in their own right, like in terms of if we just analyze those Rambams and answered questions based on that, then I can send you the links to my shiurim on the Rambam last year, or I'll include them in the show notes. But we're going to really focus on the Abravanel for now. Okay. So without further ado, let us review. So we started off with a summary of the Rambam's overall framework for Hilchos Deos, the laws of character traits. Dea is a word for character trait, which the Rambam conceives of as having a spectrum and then 2 extremes in the middle. And so the examples I gave last time are frugality is between miserly and profligate, courageous is between cowardly and reckless, and moderation is between hedonism and asceticism. I'm smiling because I actually just unwittingly discovered another dea today. Is someone had asked me if I was planning on coming over tonight after my Shabbos meal, and so I responded to them. I said, it depends on which end of on whether I feel closer to the introvert or the extrovert side of my ambivert spectrum. I don't know if it actually is a spectrum, but that's definitely how I feel about it. And I was thinking, that would be a good example of a dea of like what I need in order to recharge or to like where I draw my energy from. So Rambam says that there is a goal of getting to the middle path in every day, and that's not just a goal, it's a mitzvah of the halakha b'drachav, of walking in God's ways. And the way we do this, all things being equal, is you practice behaviors that are associated with the middle until they become second nature and easy. Okay, so that was what we did in chapter 1. Then we read through the first couple halachos in chapter 2, which is about sicknesses of the soul, which the Rambam defines as loving bad deos. Now, loving does not mean, I wouldn't say loving means like, let's say you have the bad extreme dea of greed. Okay, so loving greed is not like a Scrooge McDuck type, like you say like, oh, I love being greedy. I think a better word for love here is attachment to, or a viewing of something as the good when really it's the bad, a certain blindness. And the Rambam quoted the Yeshayahu Hanavi, who said, woe unto those who call good bad and bad good, who call sweet bitter and bitter sweet, who make light into darkness and darkness into light. So it's like a point where you are so far gone on one of the deos, that you are incapable of properly evaluating what is good and bad, and you treat the good as bad or the bad as good. Okay, so what do you do when you have a bad dea? you go to the refuah, the remedy is to go to the chachamim, who are soul doctors, rofei nefashos, and they'll teach you how to cure yourself. And then the Rambam gives a prescription about what they will do. He says, the method of refuah is to go to the opposite extreme and practice the behaviors associated with that extreme for a long time until you can return to the middle path. And I forgot whether I said this on the shiur last time, but the Rambam, it's funny, the Rambam says, go to the chachamim and they'll cure you. And then he says, how will they cure you? Like this. So it kind of makes you wonder, then why do you need to go to the chachamim, you know? Well, actually, I'll ask you. I don't think we talked about this last time. I just wanted to mention it. So if he says, go to the chachamim and they'll heal you, and then the Rambam tells you how to heal yourself, so then, yeah, why do you need to say, go to the chachamim? What do you think? You understand the question, or should I clarify the question? I'll give an analogy, okay, in case anyone wants me to make it clear. Okay, it'd be like if you read in you know, let's say you had a certain symptom, okay, and you looked it up and it says you have to go to a doctor, they will tell you what to do, and this is how you cure it. And then it goes, you know, well, which one is it? Like, if you can tell me how to cure it, so then why do you tell me to go to a doctor?
Could it be that people will follow it better if it's coming from the chachamim? Like they'll enforce and do what it is if it's coming from the system?
Okay, that's a good answer, right? Meaning that Ram is just giving you a general idea about what to do, but the chachamim will reinforce that because they have more knowledge of the soul than the average person does. Okay, I think you can actually extend that a little bit further. In other words, not just their authority. What else, I guess, might you get from the chachamim in terms of that you couldn't get from your own thing?
Chizuk?
So like by chizuk, you mean like emotional reinforcement? Like,
I'm thinking.
What do you mean by chizuk?
I'm thinking.
Okay, yeah. Or let me ask you a different question. Maybe why would you need chizuk?
It's hard to do these things, and it's hard. Like, you have an identity and you feel like you're a certain way, and if people are encouraging you and giving you approval to do it, I think it helps. Okay, good. So in other words, this is kind of like, okay, tell me if this is if I'm misunderstanding you, but the type of chizuk you can get from the chachamim is like the same reason why people will hire a personal coach, like for you know, working out and stuff, is, yeah, you could go to the gym and you could read up on what you're supposed to do, but having someone for like accountability, for encouragement, for like, you know, helping you stick to it, for like talking you down when you want to give up, you know, these are things that the chachamim can do that you can't do on your own, even when you know what you're supposed to do. Is that like what you meant, or is there something I'm missing? That's one of the reasons I live here.
Yeah, it's true, right? And that's it's not. And it's not just your personal decision, but this is in Hilchos Deos itself. The Rambam says it's a mitzvah to live in the vicinity of chachamim and tzaddikim, so that you can learn from their actions and so they can influence you, because a person is influenced by their society. Yeah, I think it's definitely reasonable. Any other answers or any other dimensions of this answer?
Yeah, I mean, going off of that, my thought was that kind of similar to the doctor example, like you could, you know, have a general example as to how to cure a disease, but like a doctor is going to, when you're one-on-one with the doctor, they'll be able to like take a history and give you more like personal practical ways to apply it.
That's what I was thinking as well. Again, I'm fully agree with what Essie's saying, but I was thinking that, you know, as they say, the devil's in the details, you know, so the Rambam can say, oh, you're suffering from, you know, spending too much money, so just don't. Okay, right? Don't spend money for a long time. Well, the thing is, or actually, let's use a better example. Okay, let's say you have an overeating problem. Let's say like whenever you go to a wedding, you just cram yourself with the food or Shabbos, you know. So it's easy for a person to say, well, eat less. Okay, but the thing is that you need to eat, right? So why do you go to a nutritionist? So they can guide you about how can you get what your body needs, but at the same time not overdo it. And like, so not so much for, like Essie's answer was focusing on arguably a more important thing in terms of like following through, which is the psychological boost and like the emotional dimension. But Nava's pointing out you also need intellectual guidance in figuring out the particulars, and that's what you need the Chachamim to do. I have an answer that's kind of in the middle of those two, or a blend of the two, which is here we are dealing with sicknesses of the soul, which means you see the good as bad and the bad as good. So not if you were just working on cultivating a particular dea of getting in the middle path, but you're not sick, so then maybe you could do that on your own because you know what you're supposed to do and you just practice it until it becomes natural. Here, it's harder to practice the opposite extreme because you view it as bad. Your emotions, those parts of you see it as actually harmful, and the other way, or you have an idea of what is harmful and it really is good for you, but like you're viewing as harmful. So in other words, you can't see things objectively. So you need the Chachamim not only to guide you in the particulars, but also to help you to realize like, no, this is actually good for you. Just two examples of this. We were talking before my Rambam shiur yesterday about people who overwork themselves and experience burnout, who has two thumbs and burns out? This guy. So we were saying that part of the problem is when you are in this mode where being productive is good and you can't see that the way that you're engaging productivity is harming you, then all you feel is like, if I cut back at all, I am being bad, And so you need someone, and again, this is what I mean, this is a mix of both of them. You need someone to help you to understand intellectually that, no, this is actually harming you and you're not being productive if you continue to push yourself. And you also need someone emotionally to talk you down and say that you need to take better care of yourself, and the Chachamim can serve these roles. And I think that these three things are a good answer for how the Rambam can say, go to the Chachamim, but this is what you should do. Okay. One more answer, by the way, which I think we gave this in my Rambam B'kiyos shiur when we analyzed this last year, is it's possible that the Rambam says, go to the Chachamim and they'll tell you how to cure the deos. And then the Rambam gives what he thinks as a doctor, as a Chacham and as a doctor, is the best prescription, which is to go to the opposite extreme. However, the Rambam might know that knowledge of psychology might change, and the psychologist in one generation might not prescribe the same thing as the psychologist in the other generation. Again, the Rambam is getting all this from Aristotle, and I don't know whether the Rambam thought that this method of going to the opposite extreme behaviorally was from Torah, or if the Rambam says, no, the Torah tells you get the middle path, get good deos, good deos that emulate Hashem, but you have to figure that out based on the current chachma of the time. And I can't remember if I mentioned this in the shiur. No, I think after the shiur, one of my friends who is a therapist said that he's always been bothered by these Rambams about anger and haughtiness, because the Rambam would seem to say that if you have an anger issue, you should go to the opposite extreme and try to not react, or you should degrade yourself. And my friend was saying how that seems to be recognized now as unhealthy, if you try to suppress your anger. So it's possible that's why the Rambam has the split, that on the one hand, his main thing is saying, if you're sick in your soul, go to the Chachamim, they'll tell you. And by the way, this is what I think is the best remedy, but that might change. So that's another possibility. Okay.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. And again, this is I meant to reiterate this at the beginning of this year. This is not, again, unlike my other Friday shiurim, this is not like where I have set ideas and I know exactly where I'm going. I want this to be an investigation that we do on the topics that we've taken up. So even though we haven't yet talked about humility today, I'm fine. We're not on any timetable here. Okay. So we should feel free to take up whatever questions occur. So don't hold back questions if you have them. Okay. So then we read the Rambam on arrogance and humility, and let's reread those just to refresh our memory. He says, there are character traits which a person is prohibited to act upon in accordance with the middle path, meaning don't stay on the middle path. Rather, he should distance himself to the other extreme. One of these is haughtiness, gaiva, or gova halev, he says here. For it is not a good path for a person merely to be humble. Rather, he should be lowly of spirit, and his spirit should be exceedingly low. Therefore, it was said of Moshe Rabbeinu, very humble, anav ma'od, and not merely humble. Therefore, the sages commanded, be very, very lowly of spirit. That's me'od me'od havei shval ruach. That's the Mishnah that we focused on. Furthermore, they said, anyone whose heart is haughty has denied God's existence. As it is stated, your heart will become haughty and you will forget Hashem, your God. Furthermore, they said, whoever is haughty should be ostracized, even if he is only somewhat haughty. So we asked a bunch of questions, which were, what is gaiva? What's the definition? 2, what's so bad about gaiva? Why the extreme stance of it's like you're denying God or you should be ostracized? 3, how do we get rid of gaiva? That's kind of the whole point of the series. But specifically, in Hilchos Deos 2:2, the Rambam said that when he was talking about sicknesses of the soul, he said, if you're very haughty, you should wear worn out clothing, sit in the most degraded position in the community, act in ways that degrade you. But now we have a problem here, because the Rambam, when he gave that particular advice, sounded like he was saying, if you happen to have a haughtiness problem, then you should go to the opposite extreme. But now he's saying that everyone should go to the extreme. So does that mean everyone should wear worn out clothing and sit beneath everyone and act in a degraded manner all the time? That seems to not be the case. Like that first of all, we don't see people doing that in Chazal or in Chachamim now. And the Rambam should have said he shouldn't have used that as an example of what you should do if you have a regular sickness of the soul. He should have said, this is what you do and everyone should do to get rid of haughtiness. And by the way, I forgot if I mentioned this in shiur last time. All right, I might repeat it, but there was a school of Musar in the 1800s that this was their policies. They would basically like tell their students to, do things that are ridiculous and that shame them. Like the example I heard is like, you go into a hardware store and then ask the guy for a piece of meat, and then when he like says what's going on, then you say, no, I want a piece of meat, and you have to like voluntarily like embarrass yourself, So is the Rambam really saying everyone should do that, or that's only for extreme cases? Question 4 is, should we really get rid of all gaiva? First of all, wouldn't that be mentally unhealthy? Like my therapist friend was saying. 2, didn't God give us ego for a reason? There are, generally speaking, in Judaism, we do say that every emotion or every aspect of the Yetzer Hara has its purpose, and that you shouldn't get rid of it. You should really reroute it or harness it or sublimate it. So what should we do with our ego? We said, isn't it necessary to have gaiva for how others relate to us? And I don't think I said this last time, but in anger, the Rambam also says that anger is something you should distance yourself from. You should never get angry. But then he says, if it's necessary for you in your parenting or in your communal leadership or with your talmidim to display anger in order to discipline the people who are under your charge, then you should do that. But he says you should be like a person who is acting the part of an angry man, like in a play or in a movie, but inside you should be completely calm. So that works out for anger, but he doesn't say that for haughtiness. He doesn't say that it's proper to ever act the part of someone who is holding themselves in high regard, even though your inside is humble. So does that mean he holds you should never do that? So that's weird. And then 5th question was, why should you be exceedingly lowly? Is it that that's an ideal, and therefore we're striving to do that because we want to get there and stay there? Or really is the ideal that you are in the middle, but because there's such a strong pull to haughtiness, then you have to overcompensate or there's a word for this, like overshoot it. There's a better word. Like I use the example of like the shopping cart, where if the wheel is like pulling you in one direction, you have to like forcefully go in the other direction to kind of like even out. So those were our 5 questions on the Rambam. Okay, so again, we're not going to set out to answer these questions directly based on the Rambam. We're going to keep them in mind, and when we do the Abravanel, we'll see if he answers our questions. Okay, then still reviewing. I know this is a long review, but I feel like this is good. We read the Mishnah in Avos, Me'od me'od havishval ruach, shetikvas enosh rima, be very, very lowly of spirit, for the hope of mortal man is worms. We said, what is Rabbi Levi Tosa's reasoning? How should the fact that we're going to be worm food make us lowly? How does the strategy of worm food differ from the general strategy of memento mori, of thinking about death? Why focus on worms? What does he mean the hope of man is worms? And then the last question we said was, Judaism holds that the body is not the essence. The soul is the essence, and that does not become worm food, and that goes on after death. So why should we care what happens to our body? And furthermore, it seems like the higher level you're on, the more you identify with your non-physical self, your non-physical Tzelem Elokim, the less the strategy is going to work. And yet Pirkei Avos is written for people who are on a higher level, so it doesn't really match up. Okay, so now we do the Abravanel. Okay, now I mentioned this at the beginning of this year, but I just want to brace yourselves for this. Okay, the Abravanel gives these strategies. I've never seen anything like this in the Rishonim. Okay, and it might strike you as weird, but it's this weirdness which captivated me and made me want to give this year. Okay, and I have not fully, I'm not fully on board. Okay, I want to explore this and see, are these viable strategies? Okay, so we're probably only going to get through the first two, and it happens to be that they pair well together. So the Abravanel says, the commentators have already mentioned that the sicknesses of arrogance and haughtiness stem from one of 7 causes or more than one. Now, we're not going to get through all 7 today, and we're not even going to read them. In fact, you know what? Maybe I should actually just read the 7 so you know where we're going. Okay, give me 1 second. I feel like if you hear about the 7 at the outset, you'll see where we're going. Okay. And so he says, so the 7 are physical beauty, okay, physical strength, and those are the 2 we're focusing on today. Third one is family, what do we call it? Yichus, like pedigree, or there's a better word, whatever, like your family, okay, taking pride in your family's background, ancestry, whatever. 4 is social pride of having lots of family and friends. 5 is wealth. 6 is power, prestige, authority, and 7th is chachma, is wisdom. Okay. So today we're only going to focus on the on physical beauty and physical strength. Okay. Now he seems to be saying here that these are the only 7 categories, and when I was working on this with my charusa, then we agreed. It seems like these are the only 7. But if you think of any exceptions to that, let me know. Okay, I mean, we're
Did you say anything like wealth?
Yeah, wealth was number 5 or 6. Okay. Yeah.
Can I offer a thought?
Sure.
So I was thinking that maybe haughtiness is not just like, believing you're better than other people, but kind of forgetting that like God has played a major role in whatever achievement you have.
Correct.
Or else is entirely in control of it. So like all of the things you listed are things that you are born with, or you are born like predisposed toward, and then also like there's a lot of luck involved in it. And so someone trying to take someone being haughty because of that is denying the fact that was given to them by God and not something that they've like personally earned.
Yeah.
So I think haughtiness is more about like forgetting your place in the world and forgetting that like forgetting what God gave you, and that's specifically why it's so bad.
Okay.
And then I'm thinking of Moshe and how like people would say that Moshe always remembered God and always thought of God, except for that one moment where like when he hits the rock, when his language reflects that he's not thinking about God, and that may be why his punishment was so bad, because he was being haughty in that one moment.
Okay. So very good answers. And in fact, it works out very nicely, because the 2 things you said of these things were given by God, or God is in control of like the circumstances, those are going to correspond to what the Abravanel says for the first and second types of haughtiness. So props. Okay. And for that reason, I'm actually going to hold off on commenting on what you said till we see it in the Abravanel. But I can give you advice now that you've mentioned this, not you, but I will give us advice, which is that's a great idea. And to me, walking into the shiur, that has been my understanding as well. So now the question is going to be, what's with all this other stuff that the Abravanel is going to say? Okay, this is what I'm calling the weird stuff. Okay, and by the way, I don't mean any disrespect to the Abravanel. You're going to also think it's weird when we read this next. Okay, let's plunge into the weirdness. Okay. The first cause of haughtiness is beauty. Okay, so I'm just going to read the English unless I want to draw attention to the Hebrew. The first is beauty, radiant good looks, the human form which is desirable to look at, a person's height, etc. Okay, so we know what physical beauty is. We don't have to elaborate. These things often confound the mind and make the heart haughty, as in the case of Avshalom and Adoniyahu. Now, I have mentioned many times, I have a severe gap in my my Tanakh knowledge in terms of the Nevi'im Rishonim because I was never a Jewish child. So I had to like look this up because I did not know that what they were referring to. So just two psukim here. By Avshalom, it says that Avshalom lo haya ish yafeh b'chol Yisrael lahalel ma'od. There was no one in all of Israel as praiseworthy for his beauty as Avshalom, which means that, like, you know, could have just said that he was more handsome than everyone else, but it sounds like it means that he had the reputation for being handsome, that people were always talking about his looks. He had no blemish from the sole of his foot to the top of his head. Okay, so that's the Avshalom thing. And then Adoniyahu, I also didn't know what this one was about. Adoniyahu ben Chagis misnase lemor ani emloch. Adoniyahu, son of Chagis, exalted himself, saying, "I shall reign." This is when David Melech was about to die. I'll just read it in English. He provided himself with a chariot and riders and 50 men to run before him. All his days, his father had never saddened him by saying, "Why have you done this?" That's the famous thing that David Melech never disciplined his son. V'gam hu tov toar ma'od. He was very good looking. The Oso Yalda Achrei Avshalom, and he was born after Avshalom. So it's interesting that it throws in the good looking, along with his father never rebuked him, along with he exalted himself, saying, "I will reign." So it does sound like these things are tied together. Okay, here comes the weirdness. Its remedy. The remedy for this haughtiness is a person should contemplate the contrast between their outer beauty and the inner ugliness of their body, their moistures or like their bodily fluids, okay, their guts and the excrement that is in them and the urine in the bladder. And one should remember that if he saw these on his table, his soul would loathe all the food and it would be disgusting and repugnant in his eyes. Okay. So step one is imagine, so you're looking at yourself in the mirror, okay, and you're like, "Oh, I'm so beautiful," right? So imagine your guts and imagine I am a bag of meat holding a balloon of urine and tubes of excrement, okay? And if I just were to dump that out on the table, I would lose my appetite. Okay, so start with that. Okay, we're gonna go on. We're gonna read through the whole thing and then we'll have to come back and analyze it. Okay, because I want to see the big picture. And with this, he should remember the things that his body begets: the lice, the fleas, the worms, the putrid sores. Okay, now we still hold by sores. Okay, I guess example that that probably most people can relate to is like, you know, going through puberty and having acne, right? So think of like the pimples and like with the pus in them. When he says the lice and the fleas, this was back when they held by a spontaneous generation, or they held that the body, they held that basically the I don't know the details, but I think that your skin and like certain like putrefaction in your skin actually gave rise to like fleas and lice that your body gave birth to, which is why like they held back then that you could kill them on Shabbos because it was not a creature that was born, it was spontaneously generated, you know? So we don't have that anymore. And we also hopefully are not crawling with lice and fleas. Okay, if you are, then get that taken care of, go to a doctor. But can we give like an analogy that is true nowadays that like we could think of that would give us this feeling of revulsion that he's talking about?
I mean, I'm just thinking of like actual head lice that you get in your hair. But that's
yeah. So when we are fortunate enough to get lice, you know, then you could definitely think of this. But he's talking about something that was like all the time. Like people always had lice, you know, which is like nasty to think about, but it was true back then. You know, everyone just was always crawling with lice. So is there something else that we can replace lice with that we always have, not just like those few times when a person might get lice?
The bacteria living in and on our body.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing, right? So we now know, and they did not know. And I think he would actually, like, if we told him this, he would go, yeah, and he'd be very excited that our skin is crawling with bacteria. Our gut has bacteria in it, good bacteria, but bacteria. And there's just all these microorganisms everywhere that if we could visualize, okay, this is a good thing. If you could visualize all of the bacteria and the microorganisms all over yourself, you would just freak out, okay? Especially if you are squeamish around bugs and stuff, and I think this is a shot that I once gave on. I don't know if this is actually a good interpretation, but a long time ago, I thought there's a Gemara that says, if God gave sight to the eye, then a person would not be able to to stand upright or to remain his composure when he saw the thousands of mazikim that are around him, the thousands of like demons, there are some statements of Chazal where when they talk about demons, they're clearly talking about what we know as bacteria. So I once thought that was the case, that they were talking about if you could see all of the bacteria around you, then you wouldn't be able to stand it. And then I learned that Chazal didn't know about bacteria, so that can't be what they meant, but I think it still works out for us. Is if you saw all the bacteria. Did you ever okay, I don't know if you ever had this, but when I was a kid and in elementary school and they were teaching us how to wash our hands, then they did the thing where they spray the stuff on our hands, and then they have us wash with soap, and then they have us put it under a black light, and then you could see all the places that you missed. And then they would sometimes do a before and after, and it would show all of the dirt or bacteria. I don't know what they were doing. I was a kid, but it's a really visual, visceral experience when you realize how dirty your hands are. And we are in a society where we care about being clean. And post 2019, post 2020, when we had coronavirus, I think most of us are more attuned to cleanliness and viruses and bacteria than we were beforehand. So yeah, that's the equivalent. Okay, onward. Again, we'll analyze this after we get to the end. And above all of this, he should remember the day of death, when his body will remain a corpse deprived of its beautiful form and appearance. Like Akavia ben Mahalalel said, contemplate from where you came and to where you are going. So let me show you the statement he's referring to. This is in the first Mishnah and the third Perek Pirkei Avos, and I'm going to read it in Hebrew because I like it in Hebrew. Akavia ben Mahalalel Omer, Histalko b'shlosha devarim v'iyata ba'li de avera. Contemplate three things and you will not come to sin. Da me'ayin basa, you should know from where you came, ul'anata holech, and where you are going, v'lifnei mi'ata asid litain din v'cheshbon, and before whom you will one day have to give a judgment and a reckoning. Me'ayin basa, where did you come from? Mitipas rucha, from a putrid drop. Ul'anata holech, where are you going? Limakom afar rima v'solea, to a place of dirt, worms, and maggots. V'lifnei mi'ata asid litain din v'cheshbon, and before whom will you have to give a reckoning? Lifnei melech malchei amlachim hakadosh baruch hu, before the king of kings, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now, pause for 1 second. Many episodes of the Stoic Jew podcast, of my Stoic Jew podcast, are based on this idea that is in common with the Stoics and with Chazal and Torah, which is remembering the day of death as impetus for tshuva, and realizing that you're going to have to give a reckoning, and realizing that you only have a limited amount of time left. In fact, I got to show you something. Not directly related, but I think it's cool enough that I want to show you. This came, I bought this as an impulse buy, and it came in the mail. Hold on just a second, let me just so I can see myself. So this is a calendar I bought called Weeks of My Life, and it's a checkbox thing where you check off how many weeks you have left to live. And the idea is you put it up, and at the end of each week, you check off one thing, and you can visualize. And again, obviously, you don't know when you're going to die. You could die before, you could die later. But the point is that you're visualizing that there's a discrete quantity, and that hopefully that gets you to live in line with what you should be doing. Or on Wednesday night, I gave the shiur on Devorah's grave, and what's the idea of either davening at the graves of tzaddikim or having eulogies for tzaddikim. And the Malbim explained that when a tzaddik dies, or when you reflect on the death of a tzaddik, you think about how they spent their life, and then that prompts you to think, well, how am I spending my life? And so that's a common trope. but that's not what the Abravanel is talking about. Okay, and I wanted to articulate that because it's useful, but that's not what the Abravanel is talking about, because in line with his strategies, what do you think he means? I mean, you could read here. What do you think he means when he says that you should think about the day of death?
You're not going to look so pretty.
Yes, you're not going to look so pretty. In fact, yeah, to put it nicely. And
you're going to start rotting.
And you're going to start rotting. In fact, I'm going to actually pull up something from my Koheles curriculum, because the best one who did this was Shlomo HaMelech with Rashi's help, really quoting Chazal. Give me 1 second. I should have actually incorporated this into my PowerPoint, but it shouldn't take me long to find. So chapter 12 of Koheles is a very bizarre chapter. Okay, hold on. Oh, you know what? Hold on. I have to actually exit. Wait. Exit from the full screen PowerPoint. Switch to different PowerPoint. Yeah, okay. Oh, you know what? Sorry. This is the wrong one. Sorry. Finding it. Koheles. Oh, there we go. Koheles 12. Let me just double check that this is the right one. Yeah, okay. Nava, ready for a trip down memory lane? Here we go. Okay, so the last chapter of Koheles. Okay. So I'm just going to read it in English because it's very long in the Hebrew. Oh, and the English is very poetic. Remember your creator in the days of your youth, before the days of evil come, and those years arrive of which you will say, I have no desire in them. Before the sun, the light, the moon, and the stars grow dark, and the clouds return after the rain. On the day when the guards of the house will tremble, and the powerful men will stoop, and the grinders are idle because they are few, and the gazers through the windows are dimmed. When the doors in the street are shut, when the sound of grinding is low, when one rises up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of song grow dim, when they fear even a height and terror in the road, and the almond tree blossoms, and the grasshopper becomes a burden, and the desire fails, so man goes to his eternal home, while the mourners go about in the streets. Before the silver cord snaps, and the golden bowl is shattered, and the pitcher is broken at the fountain, and the wheel is smashed at the pit. Thus the dust returns to the ground as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Futility of futilities, said the Koheles. Everything is futile. Okay, so even if we don't understand, you can see the screen, right? Okay, I'm getting this weird thing with the Zoom border. Okay, even if we don't know what this means, it has like this weird, I don't know if you got the vibe, it has this weird poetic, like surreal, like bleak type like feel to it as a poem. But then, so the question is, oh man. Okay, can you still see the screen now? And just say yeah. Okay, good. Because I can't see you guys anymore, but whatever. Oh, now you pop back again. I don't know what's going on. So the major question on Koheles is, what's the main idea of the psukim? So this is what I want to show you. So most of the Mefarshim say that this is an allegorical description of growing old and dying. Okay, and when you remember your death, then you'll live your life differently. So here's Rashi. Okay, he says, so he quotes Akavi ben Mahalalel. And he quotes the full thing, and he says, so this is my paraphrasing of Rashi. So he says like this: before the days of evil come is referring to the days of old age and feebleness. Before the sun grows dark is referring to your forehead wrinkling. Okay, because I guess the person's face well, we even say like the person's face was beaming, you know. So there is a certain like radiance of a person's face. So it's growing dark means it's wrinkling. Before the light grows dark is your nose is wrinkling. The moon growing dark is your eyes growing dim. The stars growing dark is your cheeks becoming sunken. So again, this is all a vivid depiction of old age. The clouds will return after the rain is you will weep throughout your life. You're going to remember back then, I mean, we have tragedies now, but a lot more people dying and getting sick back then than now. You know, people, you know, mothers losing, you know, scores of children, you know, and only a couple lasting, and people like dying of horrible illnesses. The guards of the house will tremble is a mashal for your rib cage will become frail. The powerful men will stoop is a reference to your legs becoming cramped. The grinders are idle, for they are few. Is your teeth becoming weak and falling out? The gazers through the window are dimmed, your eyesight becoming weak. Okay, now we get to the nasty stuff. Oh no, not yet. I mean, this is nasty also. The doors in the street are shut, your orifices will become stopped up. I don't know if that refers to like constipation type issues. The sound of grinding is low, you won't eat very much. Old people like lose their appetite. When one rises at the voice of a bird, your sleep will be light. Old people get up, early in the morning and they don't sleep very long. The daughters of song will grow dim, as your hearing will weaken. They fear even a height and a terror in the road. You will be afraid of bumps in the road, since you could fall and die. And that's even true today, right? Like, so many old people can be healthy, and then if they have a bad fall that makes them bedridden, or they like break their bone, that becomes the beginning of the end, and then they just rapidly deteriorate. The almond tree blossoms is almond trees grow really quickly, so old age will come upon you really quickly. Again, if you talk to old people, then they'll say like what happened, like like Popo, like my grandmother says, she's 97 and she'll say, I don't feel a day older than 75, like, when did this happen? The grasshopper becomes a burden, is your weight will become a burden, which is a very interesting thing. I've never actually heard testimony of this, but I do wonder that, like, when you're old and frail, if you are more sensitive to the fact that you're carrying around the weight of your own body. Desire fails, sexual desire weakens, man goes to his eternal home, means you're going to die. The mourners go about the streets, people mourn you. Okay, now comes the nasty part. The silver cord snaps, is your spinal cord will rot and dissolve, right? This is talking about the decomposition of the corpse. The golden bowl is shattered, your bladder will collapse. The pitcher is broken at the fountain, your stomach will burst open. The wheel is smashed at the pit, your eye will burst in its socket. The dust returns to the ground, as your body will decompose, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Your soul goes back to God. Okay, so again, that's just a sampling, but that's the type of thing that I think the Abravanel is talking about, given his vivid description here. And if you want to really do this, so then if you're not squeamish, if your squeamishness level is somewhat moderate, you can read about decomposition of corpses on Wikipedia. If you're really if you have an iron stomach, go to Google Images. Even I was going to try to find images that are like, paintings of corpses rotting, so that I can like incorporate it into the thing. And I was like, no, I might encounter like actual images of corpses, and I'm not ready for that right now. The one experience I have had that I associate to when I read this was when I was in 10th grade in public school. We went to the University of Central Washington in our biology class, and we looked at cadavers, like dead human beings that were preserved in formaldehyde. And there were 4 of them, and they were all on these tables. And thankfully, their faces were covered, because I think I could not have stood to see their faces, but they were all, dissected. And like, we were able as 10th graders to take gloves and to reach in and like handle their innards. And the thing I think that did freak me out was seeing their feet, because like the guts, you can almost like, we built up to this by dissecting, frogs and then pigs and then this. So there's kind of like this is an organism, but when you see human feet, or I can't remember if I saw human hands, that was like, that impressed itself upon me. Like I have very relatively few images of in 10th grade. That's one of them that stuck with me. So that's what the Abravanel means, of like visualizing this stuff and visualizing yourself, getting to this state. And I had this idea when I was going over this with the guys in yeshiva. I had this idea and for an app, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and say it, even though someone could steal the idea, because there's no way I'm going to invest the energy to make an app. So like, if you do this, like, just give me royalties. All these apps that people do to like with filters of like, making yourself look old, or like gender swapping. I want to find like a group of like, people who are involved in like, criminal, forensics or whatever, and make an app where you can see what you will look like as a corpse in various stages of decay. And then I feel like it'd be popular among the non-Jewish crowd, like especially all the people who love zombie like movies and stuff, but then we can market it to the Jewish crowd and like get together like an app that has all of the stuff like this Abravanel about like visualizing like the day of your death. And then like, you know, you could actually like visualize it, you know? So that would be fun and / not fun and terrifying. Okay, so that's what he means here. Going on.
Anyways,
yes.
So you're saying that as opposed to visualize it as to counter a sense of beauty. In other words,
that's a good way to say it.
Not as a way of getting around like a philosophical anything, but just like actually
Correct.
You're not.
Yeah, thank you for articulating that. Yeah, that's a clear way to say it, is that it's not, and it's not to the exclusion of teshuvah and day of death. Obviously, like that's going to happen also, but it's specifically to remedy your taking pride in your beauty of this beautiful face is going to deteriorate. And in fact, when I was teaching this in Shalhevet, you know, then I really enjoyed doing this. So in Shalhevet, we shared a building with Temple Hillel, and it was the place where the senior citizens would come to like have their activities. And there would often be lots of old women walking around, you know? So I would teach this Perek and Koheles, you know, and especially the part about growing old. And I would see certain students really affected by it, you know, I guess good imagination or good, you know, empathy, whatever it was. And I'd see other students who just wouldn't be phased. And sometimes students would ask questions which would reveal that they're just not like getting it. And I would like literally go over to the door, point at the old women through, not like grab an old woman, but like point, you know, our Koheles class was in room 5 many times, and it was right opposite the ballroom where you could see the old people, you know. And I would say, you know, well, whatever your name, I would say the student's name. You see that woman, you see her face, just stop for a second and imagine yourself wrinkling and looking like that and needing a walker, and I would tie it to that person, and then I would see the student's face blanch and be like, oh, you know, like you really have to visualize it in yourself to get the full effect. And yeah, it's to counteract the taking pride in your beauty and realizing that this is all gonna like fade. And you see, by the way, just to go back to more Kohelet stuff, you see that the more pride people take in their appearances, the more of a tragedy old age is, and they become obsessed with the aging process and the anti-aging industry. I'm sure you guys, you're more aware of it than I am. I'm sure with, you know, I mean, I know it's men have products also that are anti-aging, but like for women, I'm sure it's even more so, of like all these like ways to deny or to slow the inevitable. And yeah, people get caught up in that. Okay. Then he says more stuff like this. Give more thought to how you are nourished when you chew your food, and how if you spit out your food, how disgusting, nasty, and repulsive it would be in your eyes to return it to your mouth. If you returned it there, you would vomit everything disgusting that you have ever eaten. Okay, so now he's talking about like, this is even more disconnected with beauty. He's saying like, yeah, like, you know, you're eating, I mean, we've all had this experience where like, you know, you're eating, I don't know, let's say something like a piece of meat or whatever, and like there's like some piece of gristle or whatever, and like you spit it out. And then if you imagine yourself eating it again, then you like get the gag reflex, you know? So he's saying you should do this and think about all the ways that you're sustained. And what's the point? He says next, behold, if so, that food which is sweet to your palate, which you chew to satisfy your soul's desire, is itself a disgusting process of dissolving, or maybe breaking down, we would say better, is that's what your stomach does. And nature tricks a person to eat, chew, and digest his food in a hidden manner, so that we should eat and live and not die, and so that the earth should not be void. So he's basically saying like, it's disgusting inside of you when you're digesting all the food, but you don't see that. So just to pull the page from what he's saying, imagine if your skin and organs were transparent and you could watch the digestive process, it would be nasty. Okay, so then he goes on. So up until now, I don't know about you, I have not really heard people advocate this. Then he says what Brooke said, okay? And this, I think, you know, is the normal approach. Chazal said, in the first chapter of Sota, there were 5 who resembled divine beings, which I presume means like angels, okay? Like 5 people who had angelic beauty, we would say. But because they were haughty, they were all stricken, were punished. Shimshon for his strength, Shaul for his neck, Avshalom for his hair, Asa for his feet, and Tzidkiyahu for his eyes. This was a divine sentence. For these were all divine gifts, which a person does not merit through his own efforts, but through nature, exactly as Brooke said. But let's just go into what these examples are. So Shimshon, I don't need to quote Psukim because I think even people like me who are not familiar with Nevi'im Rishonim have heard of Shimshon and his strength, which is funny, by the way, that he, this really pertains more to the next category, not beauty, but whatever. Shaul for his neck. So what was that all about? Anyone know? You read it, you're like, he took pride in his neck. So really it was, yeah.
Thinking about, just going back for a second, Shimshon for strength, maybe the reason for why it's in this category is because he, like, it wasn't about the fact that he was strong, it's about how he physically looked because he was strong.
Correct. His hair, right? And his appearance. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, correct. That's a good answer to my question. So it was Shaul, it was not his neck, it was his height. Okay. It says Velo Haya Ben, so Kish had a son, Ushmo Shaul, and his name was Shaul. Bachur, he was a youth, but Tov. And Tov here means good looking. Okay, that's what the Mefarshim say. The Ein Ish Mi Bnei Israel Tov Mimeno. There's no one who was more good looking than he was. Mishichmo Vamala, from his shoulders and up. From shoulders and up. Oh, sorry, from his shoulders and up. Gavoa Mikol Ha'am. The shot of that is he was like a full shoulders and head taller than all other people. So he was like, they say that about George Washington also, that he was very tall. And I guess height back then, I don't know if people were shorter back then because of like nutrition things, or if maybe just Jews still aren't very tall. But he was tall and handsome is the point. Who was the next person he mentioned? Avshalom for his hair. So we read the pasuk about Avshalom and his beauty. Then it says afterwards, it's funny the pasuk where we get this from. It says when Avshalom would have his head barbered, and then parenthetically, at the end of every year, he would have his hair barbered because it became heavy upon him and he had it barbered. I don't know why it says barbered 3 times. The hair of his head weighed 200 shekels by the king's weight. So I guess some people said he was a Nazir. I don't know why this is associated with beauty, and it's a weird way of describing it, that he had such heavy hair. Okay, like, but apparently, like according to the Gemara, then it had to do with beauty. Now,
well, it was probably thick.
Yeah. That's true, but at a certain point, thickness of hair in men becomes caveman-y, like not so beautiful, unless the standards of beauty were different back then, but it becomes like wild, so yeah.
Well, maybe the thing was that it was very thick, but like, I don't know, very like soft or sleek.
Yeah, it could be that he just styled it really like in like braided it in like an elaborate way. Who knows? Okay, so now apparently Asa, who was a righteous king, it doesn't say anywhere in the Psukim. Oh, so let's look at Rashi. Rashi says on the Gemara that he was quoting, he says, with Tzidkiyahu in his eyes, he says, I don't know his source for the fact that his eyes were like superlative. Likewise, Asa's feet. So he says he doesn't know. He says, rather, he must have learned this from his Rav. Maybe there was a Masorah. And then I have an English book on the Abravanel that says as follows, and this kind of like is spelling out the facts, right? Abravanel says that these 5 were all stricken, but how so? So here's from this English book. Shimshon's strength was derived from the spirituality of his status as a Nazir, which required uncut hair. When Delilah cut his hair, his strength disappeared, leading to his death at the hands of the Philistines. King Shaul was taller than everyone else among Israel from the shoulders up. When he committed suicide, his sword pierced his neck. Okay, I was not aware that was what happened. Avshalom, who rebelled against his father David, had long, luxurious hair, which got entangled in a tree, enabling his pursuers to catch and kill him. Asa, one of the early kings of Yehuda, punished for having pressed Torah scholars into the king's service, was known to be unusually swift of foot. In his old age, he suffered a painful disease of the feet. King Tzidkiyahu rebelled against Nebuchadnezzar, king of Bavel, who had him blinded. His eyes were gouged out. Tzidkiyahu had been noted for exceptionally sharp vision. So I don't know where this book is getting the sources from, but it's a mita connected mita thing for the things they took pride in. Okay, at the very end, now this is the last part. Therefore, one who is haughty about that which does not belong to him, and he refuses to gaze at the work of Hashem, to praise him and to laud him for the great kindness he did him, his sentence is to have that thing erased and removed. Okay, so the Gemara we just read. For since he wasn't grateful for what was given to him, it is proper for that gift to be taken away from him. This is a rebuke for the discerning individual to not let his heart become haughty and to not look at his beauty or the height of his stature. Now, this phrase, V'lachein hamizgai b'meh she'eno shalo. becoming haughty in that which is not his. So I happen to know, and I hope I'm right about this. This happens to be one of Esti's favorite lines in all Gemara of misgab ba'olam she'eno shalach, being haughty about a world that is not yours. It comes from a Gemara in Nazir. I quoted from the Gemara in Nedarim, so I guess it's repeated. So the story goes like this. So this is from Shimon HaTzadik. Shimon HaTzadik said, oh, oops, I deleted the first part of the Gemara. The first part of the Gemara says, I'm just going to read it from the English here rather than like looking it up on the screen. Where did I see this? Hold on. 14:1. No. Hold on. Maybe I do have to look it up. Okay, sorry.
So yes, you're right.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Okay. Al Torah. Oh, you know what? I'm actually going to share this now because I want to show you a feature on Al Torah, as I always like to do. So on Al Torah, which is the best place to go for your Torah online, I encourage everyone who uses it, first of all, to use it. Oops, hold on. Secondly, you should make a personal account, okay, which is free and it will keep you signed in. You don't have to sign in every time. What's the virtue of having a personal account? Well, if you click on the personal account, it will show you all of your bookmarks, all of your personal notes, which you can input, all of your highlights, and what I like, your personal history. Okay, and your personal history is like a Google history. What it'll just tell you where you went. And so see, I can just click on the Nedarim test Beis, which I clicked on this morning, and it'll take me to the Gemara. So I'll just read the Gemara from here. So it says like this. Detanya, it was taught in a Brisa. Amar Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik, miyamai lo achalti asham nazir tameh ela echad. So the fact is that whenever a nazir becomes tameh, then he has to bring korbanos. One of them is an asham. Oops. I'm going over to the cord of my computer. Okay. So he has to bring an asham, and the asham is consumed by the kohanim. So he says, I only ate from one korban of a nazir, okay? Which you'll see from the story is because he held that all the other nazirim were doing it for the wrong reasons, and this guy was doing it for the right reasons. So here's the story. Ba Adam echad nazir min hadarom. So a guy came who was a nazir from the south. V'ra'isiv shu yafe einaim. I saw he had beautiful eyes, v'tov ro'i, and he was handsome. Uketsosav seduros lo taltalin, and he had beautiful locks of hair. Okay, so this guy was not yet a nazir. He was coming to become a nazir, I think. Amarti lo, I said, Bini, ma re'isil lahashkes es se'arecha zehanai. My son, why are you going to destroy this beautiful hair? Amarli, he said to me, Ro'e Haisi La'aba Be'iri. I was a shepherd for my father in my hometown. Halafi Lamalos Maim. I went to go fill up water, min hamayan, from the spring. V'nistakati babua shali. And I saw my reflection, my own reflection. Remember, they didn't have mirrors back then, so the only time you would see your reflection, unless you were like fancy and had like a bad quality mirror, you would see your reflection in the water. So this is like the story of Narcissus in Greek mythology. I think that was him. I saw my reflection. My Yetzer Hara was awakened, or like seized me. And it sought to drive me out of the world. Amarti lo, so I said to my Yetzer Hara, Russia, you wicked person. Lama ata mizgai ba'olam she'ena shalach. Why are you becoming haughty over a world that is not yours? Bami shehu asi lios rima v'tolea. For a person who is going to one day become worms and maggots. Avoda she'agalecha l'shemaim, and then he made a netter to shave off. He says, "I'll shave off your hair for the sake of heaven." Miyad amarti v'neshaktiv. Shimon HaTzadik says, immediately I got up and kissed him al rosha, on the forehead. Amarti lo b'ni kamocha yirbu nozrei nazirus b'Yisrael. My son, may there be many more nazirim like you in Israel. Hakasuv omer. The Torah says about you, Ish kiyafli lindor nezer neder nazir lahazir lashem. You are really a nazir lishma for Hashem. Okay, so that's the Olam She'eino Shalach. And now, is that the end of that Abravanel? Give me 1 second. Sharing the screen. Where are we? Yeah. Okay, so that is the end of the Abravanel. So let's just actually review the points really quickly. Okay, so he started off by saying, whoa, too much. If you are sick with the sickness of arrogance from your beauty, you should first contemplate your guts and your inner excretory system, okay? And picture that stuff on your table and think about how disgusted you would be. Then you should remember your body generating pustules and lice, or what we say, bacteria. Your body's covered in bacteria. Then you should remember the day of death and think about your flesh rotting. Then you should think about when you eat, think about how disgusting the digestive process is and how you're sustaining yourself with food that you like. But if you could really see it, then you would gag. Then think about the people who took pride in things that were not theirs. They were gifts from God and got mida connected mida punishments. And then think about the how haughty. Think about the premises and implications of being haughty about a world that does not belong to you, and not being grateful for what you're given, and let yourself be rebuked by that. Okay, so the general question, I was gonna write out all the questions, but I think let's just let's just ask general questions here. Okay, so I think we can divide this into two categories here. Okay, so what's up with all these disgusting visualization strategies? Okay, how does this work? So certainly it works in the sense that it gives us a feeling of like disgust, but the question is, how does this help us to cure our gaiva? Okay, second question is, how does the Olam She'eino Shalach strategy work? Okay, that's i.e. recognizing that these things are gifts, that the physical beauty you have is a gift from God. Now, Brooke already started to answer that frog instead of from God. Okay, so Brooke already started to answer that question. So we'll reiterate what she said, and I'll share my thoughts on that in a second. But let's work on the first one. Okay, again, I don't know about you, I've never heard strategies like that before. So what do you say? How does that help with haughtiness?
I mean, I was thinking multiple things. One of which is that I was thinking multiple things. One of which is that it's not just that you have this feeling of disgust, it's that you have this feeling of disgust regarding your own appearance, which is the same thing you take such pride in.
Okay, good. So one thing, I want to hear your other things in a second, but one thing is that you're kind of engaging in conditioning, right? Like it's a form of conditioning where instead of having a positive, not positive like beneficial, but a positive feeling pride in your appearance, you're conditioning yourself to have this ew reaction and you're like reprogramming your gut reaction to a guts reaction in terms of your how you like, if you look in the mirror and you immediately think of yourself rotting and you train yourself to do that, you're going to stop like taking that pride in your appearance. So replacing the one stimulus with the other. Okay, that's a good approach. Yeah,
is that kind of like the Rambam, like kind of doing like a Rambam type thing?
Right. It's just you're doing it not through behavior, you're doing it through the use of the imaginative faculty, which, by the way, I meant to say this last time. Rabbi Zimmer gave a shiur a couple Sundays ago on the role of the imaginative faculty in serving God, and he actually mentioned this Abravanel because he knew I was going to give a shiur on it. as one of the uses of it. But yeah, it's like the Rambam of going to the opposite extreme, but not in behavior, but in terms of just your inner world, So yeah, that's good.
So another thing I was thinking about is that regardless of how people look on the outside, our insides do the same thing.
Yeah.
So
right.
It doesn't matter what you look like on the outside; it's about your insides.
Yeah. I've seen a couple of good memes that play off of that. There is a genre of images of tombstones and we all end up looking the same, and this is just taking a more extreme reaction inside you're all just guts and skeletons and I gotta see if I can find some of the memes to send you because they're pretty funny, but so it's emphasizing equality, right? That you are no better than anyone else in terms of your species makeup, your physical makeup. Yeah.
Regardless of your outer beauty, your inner beauty is non-existent.
Correct. And by the way, just along with that, I think that and he's kind of going to get into this. No, I'm going to save this for the next one. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was thinking another thing building off of that.
Yeah.
Building on that actually, is that you are only regardless of how pretty you are on the outside, your insides are still kind of ugly. So you're only pretty in some ways, and you have to stop I am pretty and identifying with that because
that's good.
Your intestines are still disgusting looking.
Yeah. So that actually reminds me of a pasuk in Mishle, which is a famous pasuk. Let me see if I could find it in my Mishle here. Give me a second. This one I don't know where it is offhand. I want to say it's in chapter 14 though. Let's see if my intuition is right. No, it's in chapter 11. Nezim, this is 11:22. Nezim zahav ba'af chazir isha yafa v'saras tam. So this is talking to a guy who's attracted to a beautiful woman, and it's saying like a golden ring in the snout of a pig, so is a beautiful woman who's lacking reason. Okay, who doesn't have intelligence or chachma. So the analogy there is basically saying, yeah, a golden ring is beautiful, but if you saw the ring in the snout of a pig, it's going to diminish the beauty of the ring. You're not going to be like, oh, what a beautiful pig, because it's just the ring. So Brooke is making a similar statement here about the outer beauty, oh, what a beautiful person. Well, it's beautiful skin, but inside it's all nasty. So isn't that kind of like a hog with a golden ring? And I like the way you said it, which is it's not, the point is not the percentage. The point is not if you added up all the person's skin and all their guts, then the guts are going to outweigh the skin. The point is identifying with it. I am beautiful, as opposed to my skin is beautiful, or my nose, or my eyes, or my ears. Very different between saying this part of my anatomy versus I. And you're right, it helps you to break the identification. That's really good. Yeah. And same thing, by the way, with the rotting and dying, with the Akavi ben Mahalalel, is who's the real I? The real I is the soul. And that part of you that thinks and makes decisions is the real you that's going to go on to be judged by God. And that is and that's what you should identify with. But the other part of you is just going to become worm food.
Yeah, I would say even on that, I feel like there's almost a rebuking factor to this of if you want to identify yourself based off of the way you look on the outside, good for you. That's only part of, that's not the full picture though. The full picture is also your inner organs and what those look like. And that's not even, that's not beautiful. Exactly.
Yeah, that would be so here's another visualization exercise. Okay. Imagine someone, or you can, I guess, imagine this from yourself if you take pride in your beauty, but no, imagine a supermodel, okay, who all the parts that people can see are beautiful, but imagine that under her clothing, all the parts that are covered is just repulsive, reptilian skin, or boils, or rash. So she's going to be going around And although she knows people are seeing her beauty, there's this part of her that's covered up, and she knows it's part of her, right? So like you're saying, Nava, like if you're taking pride about your physical self, you got to get the whole picture. You can't just like get part of it. And the whole picture has ugliness and beauty. It's not just all beauty. That's a really good idea. I like that.
I have another idea also.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this, by the way, this is exactly what I was hoping for. You don't realize I only had planned one thing for this, like, but I wanted to find explore these strategies and like get these like tease out what his ideas are. So I'm really glad that you have all these ideas. Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. Okay. So I was also thinking that it's about imagining like what God gave you, because if instead of just imagining things for like vain purposes, you are imagining it for its function. So it's not just like your disgusting innards, it's also like your innards that are working to keep you alive.
Right.
And the outside and the inside are working together to serve a functional purpose instead of an aesthetic purpose.
That's really good also. Okay, I really like that. And that fits in with his bodily nourishment thing, right? That's I don't know if that was what triggered the thought, but like it gets you to think of your beauty in terms of like in an Asher Yatzar framework, not in a like I am beautiful framework, right? That you have all of these bodily systems which are working in harmony together to sustain you so that you can be involved in your real human activity of seeking knowledge and living according to Chesed, Tzedakah, and Mishpat and keeping mitzvos. So the skin and the eyes and the ears and the nose are functional. They're not aesthetic. The aesthetic quality is just a quality. It's not why you have them. That's really, really good also. So you reframe it, right? Yeah, that's good. Got anything else?
Why God made it so that, why did God made us like, feel repulsion on the inside of the human body?
That's a good question. It's a good question. I mean, I would not be surprised, and this is just me speculating, not being a sciencey person, but I assume that revulsion towards like guts and decay and things like that, and also like regurgitated food is like an evolutionary thing that is designed to, or that evolved to keep you away from things that could give you diseases, and it just happens to be that the Abravanel is saying harness that for philosophical enlightenment.
Oh, it's interesting. Well, we have a dog, and dogs are not disgusted by these things at all.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, the Shlomo uses that as a like a dog that returns to eat its own vomit. So is a fool who repeats his foolishness. Yeah,
exactly what they do. Yeah.
Right. I always I had an evolutionary question on that, which is like how does that make sense? But
maybe for the dog. I mean, the animals could eat anything, and I guess their body probably kills the bacteria. They have like higher temperature than we do, so it doesn't harm them.
That could be. Maybe it just never evolved, right? Yeah.
Yeah, there's also like the psychological angle that like phenomenologically young children are still interested in their excrement and have a lot of interest in it because it's something that they make. Right. And I don't know exactly how it comes about psychologically, but we do get repulsed by our own makings, have to make that one could say that, which does serve also a psychological purpose of taking down like a certain level of gaiva over making.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I feel like the Abravanel would be really into that if you were aware of that psychological explanation. Yeah.
They say tzaddikim, like, did you hear that the body of the tzaddikim doesn't rot?
Right.
They have these.
That's interesting. About that. Yeah, I don't have an idea for that. I've heard that before though. I mean, clearly it's not true, right? But it's I don't know why Chazal would advocate that, especially since, again, I was just thinking about this with the Devorah shiur that I gave this week, that like we don't venerate physical existence, and certainly for tzaddikim, we don't say that the physical is the real thing. So it's weird that they would say that.
Yeah.
So, okay, multiple things.
Sure.
I was thinking about the parsha saying that Sarah was very beautiful and looked a lot younger than she was. Yeah. And I was thinking that, if if you take something for granted, then it's taken away. But if you specifically acknowledge it, it seems that at least in that case, it was prolonged.
Correct.
Because,
and that seems like what those five people that the Gemara quoted, that's what they should have done, which is that, if Shaul had said, yeah, I'm tall and handsome, or, again, assuming that these people like had these qualities, they should have really said, okay, this is an asset that I can use in my service of God. And that was given to me by God to use. It's a bracha. It's not an intrinsic quality that I made. I meant to mention this morning in my morning shiur, but the height of haughtiness is expressed in like Paro's statement, or the statement of Paro in Yechezkel of Li Oriv Ani Asisini. The Nile is mine and I made myself. There's this feeling of like I am self-made, or all my good qualities come from me. And that's like what the Abravanel and the Rambam and Brook were saying was denying God. It's just totally like saying that that God is not in the picture and it's my own thing. And so the recognizing that this is a bracha kind of like it helps in both those regards. Is it makes you have a hakar stove to God and frames it in a way where you can then use it to serve God, and not just get caught up viewing it as a pat on the back, like pride thing, as an end in of itself.
Hey, don't we say that that's why the imahos were so beautiful, to show everybody that, it had a purpose for them, to show people the world.
I never heard that, but that is a good idea though. Yeah.
That they could have done anything with their lives because they were so beautiful, and this is what they chose to do. So people would know that they didn't do this because they had no other options. Yeah,
that's really good. And I think the best candidate for that in the five that we mentioned is
that was a big cheat.
Okay, thanks. Is Shaul HaMelech could have used his height like George Washington did, right? And been a good king, and maybe he did for that purpose. I know his undoing was from something else, but that would have been the proper way to relate to it.
I have more thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, cool.
These are great.
Okay, so I was thinking about,
but don't take pride in that.
Yeah, I was thinking about Shimshon. He was the first one in the list, and it was like, it said that he lost his strength because of like whatever, the whole thing with Delilah. I was thinking like his strength was literally his downfall. Like he pulled down the pillars that killed him and that pushed him. But like it's not just that, it like led to this and that. Like he literally died because of his great strength. And also what was interesting was that he actually he had his strength from God, and then he lost it, and the time he regained it was when he acknowledged the fact that it was given to him by God.
Good. That's good. See, that's already more about the story of Shimshon than I have knowledge of. So I'm glad that you volunteered that. That's so like, I don't know so much about Shimshon himself, but he was on the level where he got that type of mida connected mida hashgacha pratis, and it is showing that exact point, which is like when you are recognizing it's coming from God, then you get to keep it and use it, and when you don't, then it becomes your undoing. Your haughtiness blinds you to the way you should be making these decisions. More?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. This is the last thing I've written down now.
Sure.
I was also thinking like specifically remembering that it all comes from God. So like, because it can be given, it can be taken away. Good. So thinking about the function as well as, the fashion of it also reminds you that like all of it is, for functional purposes. And then like combines that with, like worms and decay and like all of these ideas of you eventually losing that. And reminding yourself that it's temporary and it's like you're going to lose it, so there's no point getting overly attached to it.
Right. So that is good, and he's going to mention that in the part about physical strength, which is that it was given to you and it can be taken away. And again, that was Eov's good reaction to losing all of his stuff. Is Hashem nasan v'Hashem lakach, Hashem mevorach. Hashem has given, Hashem has taken. Let the name of Hashem be blessed. And realizing you can lose it, and that also helps you realize that to not identify with it, right? Is that if this is you, you can't lose you, but you could lose anything that's not you. And the fact that you could lose these things and that you will lose these things reinforces the fact that it's not you. I had one more thing to contribute to this, and then I want to move on really. The strength thing, by the way, is going to take very short amount of time, which is why I want to do it today instead of saving it for next time, because it overlaps a lot. But the point I was going to make was just about the disgusting thing is, and it's very similar to the first thing you mentioned, Brooke, about the creating the negative response, is I think if you have an unhealthy attachment to something, you can't just replace it with a positive attachment or reframe it. You have to first dissociate yourself with that negative attachment and break from it. You have to like shake yourself out of this false way of thinking, and then you can reestablish a correct way of viewing it. So I think, like I was going to say, you know, we talk about these things as a gift of God. So my question was, how do you reconcile that with looking at how disgusting it is? Like, if God gave you beauty, are you on the one hand saying it's a gift from God, and then, oh, look how disgusting it is? Like, no, that's not what you're doing. You're saying it's disgusting so that you can then distance yourself from it, clear your head of all these fantasies and distortions, and then reconnect to it in a positive way. And the Stoics have a method like this also. I don't remember what the Latin or Greek name for it was, but of it's what is it? Something about like it means having negative characterizations of things. So like the example I gave in my podcast episode is if you love coffee, remind yourself of what coffee is. It's just hot bean juice, you know, and like, you know, stuff like that, where the point is not to cease enjoying it. The point is, if you are overly indulging in the thing to the point where you make it into something more than it is, you got to like remind yourself, knock yourself down a couple of pegs and realize, well, what exactly is it? So again, I am a bag, or not I am, what I view as me, as my beauty, is a bag of flesh and pus and excrement. And then you can say, okay, but then what is it actually? It is excrement that is the result of digesting food, which is sustaining my body, which God gave me, which this whole appearance is really a function of in the system, so that I can be involved in knowledge of God. You got to break it down before you can build it up again. Okay. In the remaining minutes, let's just quickly do the next thing, which is strength. And this is very much shorter and very quick. The second cause for haughtiness is strength, for it seduces a person to see himself among his fellows as a strong lion in a flock of sheep. And he will trust in the power of his own might and remove his heart from Hashem, for he will say, my strength and the might of my hand made me this strength, as happened to Goliath HaPlishti, who blasphemed God of the legions of Israel. So that's, again, Brooke gave the example of Shimshon, but Goliath is another example, is he felt invincible, and the feeling of invincibility is what led him to underestimate David, and which is what led to his downfall. And similarly, in terms of Hashem, you got to remember that your strength is a gift from Hashem. You didn't give yourself the strength. God either gave you the nature or the nurture, which allowed you to develop the strength. And even your desire, like let's say you are really into working out or whatever, and you've cultivated the strength. Well, who gave you the nature or the nurture which gave you the ambition to be able to do this? Well, that was also God. All of these things come back to God. And this is a theme that we're going to see again and again in Anava, which is attributing everything to God. And like, this is my own strategy, but I think it fits in right here, is if you ever are feeling haughty, take out a piece of paper and make a list. And I've never actually done this physically because I can't get started, and make a list, things that I can take full credit for. And you'll find that you can't write anything, you know, because everything that you've done is as a result, even your free will decisions, you only got to the ability to have free will because you were raised in a certain way, or because you have Torah, or because you learn a certain way. All of it really you can't take credit for. So there's nothing you can really take credit for. It all comes from God, ultimately.
Well, I was thinking there are still things you can take partial credit for.
That's what I'm saying. Right. That is, I said specifically the things I can take full credit for is you can't do. Yeah, but go on. Sorry, I interrupted you.
If someone's haughty, as in saying like, I understand that part of this is because, you know, of what I was naturally given by God, or like, you know, my circumstances, whatever, part of it is still the result of their own hard work. And
right.
I'm thinking like, how do you get around that? Like what happens, someone says, I'm very beautiful, like, okay, whatever. But let's say someone says, I am very good at playing piano, because they spent, I don't know, years practicing playing the piano. Like,
right.
They were born with, the skill, like the potential to be able to do that. And they were born to a situation where they were, given the resources to do that, but like they still devoted many hours of their life toward accomplishing that.
Correct. So I think it's a good question. I think the easiest way I have two methods, and there's probably more. One method is what I call the pie chart method, which is how much of, like you said, like they were given the potential or the ability to do this, and then they worked really hard on it. How much of the final product is a result of the potential, and how much is the product of the working hard? Now I realize that in certain cases, then you'll feel like it's really the working hard that does it. But okay, sorry, I should have said the strategies in the opposite order. Let me do the opposite order strategy, and I think I'll help appreciate this point. Let's say the piano example. What if you were born in poverty in some sub-Saharan Africa village, right? You could have all the potential to be a piano player, and you just have no pianos, or you have to work all day to get water to feed your family. Having the potential is not going to the ability to put in the hours of working hard. Like for so many people in the world, the hours that they have to be used for bare survival. So it's true that you have this quality of hard work, but so much of the thing is based on your circumstances, or if you want to use modern, the terminology that's in fashion now is privilege, which I think is a horrible anti-Torah term. Really, the term we have is bracha, that God gave you the circumstances to be able to to do this. And so you are using your hard work, but it is only having an effect because of all these other things you were given. That's the Ran on this pasuk here of Yomar Kochi Vosimyadi Asali. It says Hashem Hanosin Lecha Koach Lasos Chayil. The Ran points out, it doesn't say it doesn't say Chayil. It doesn't say God gave you the wealth. It's God gave you the ability to make wealth. You had to actualize that ability because you use your free will to do that. But all of the ability, meaning the capacity, and then all the circumstances that allow you to do it, really are provided by God. The greatest talent in any person who has talent in any area is nothing if they don't have the circumstances that allow them to actually develop it. And that's what I mean by the pie chart of so many things have to go right for you to be able to do this. Think about a piano, again, just the existence of pianos presupposes a society that has enough affluence and technology to be able to build them, and for an average person to be able to have them, and for a person to be their parents to be able to afford a piano teacher, and for there be an awareness of music in the society, which means that the society has to be on the level of luxury to be able to of leisure to be able to be involved in things beyond survival. So much stuff had to go right, not only in your life, but in the whole trajectory of everything else to be able to to do this. And if you look at that span of everything that went into society to be able to do that, then it's how much did my effort, how much of the final product did my effort contribute to? That's my strategy. Okay, let's go on with the screen.
Sorry, I just want to say real quick, we have to go, but just thank you. Sure.
Yes, thank you for joining. Sorry we went over time, but yeah, okay. Last part is yes.
I just want to wish Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Yeah, sorry I went over time. I'm just going to finish the topic because it's good.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, all right, thanks for joining. I'm just going to finish this topic because it's so connected to the previous part. The remedy is to take it to heart, even if everyone has to leave. Its remedy is to take it to heart that swiftness does not belong to the light-footed, nor does strength belong to the mighty. How many of them have stumbled and fallen into the hands of those who are weaker than them, as Goliath the mighty fell at the hand of David? Contemplate with this, that there is no mighty man who can escape from external and natural occurrences, such as tripping over a stone or a rock falling from a roof onto his head, or drowning in a river, or becoming sick, or other occurrences that a mighty man cannot be saved from unless Hashem grants him salvation. He should Oh, sorry, I just split up into two things. He should internalize the song of occurrences, the shiur shel pagaim, that's Tehillim 91, and see that there's no shelter or refuge except in the shelter of the Most High. And by doing this, he will lower his eyes. So again, stuff we've all mentioned, but this is like what Brooke was saying. God gave it so God could take it away. And just think of all the ways that you can, that this can be undone. And this is true of beauty also. Think of all the people who were beautiful and then their house, they got involved in a house fire and they become physically scarred, you know, or all of the ways that you can become sick and lose all of the whatever it is that you have. Like if you're rich, you know, you can become sick and then get out of work and lose all your wealth. So all of this is reflecting on the fact that it's a gift from God and can all be taken away. Okay, so we had a lot of strategies today. Yeah, Esty?
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing, which I think is really interesting, that I feel like in this society, there's this idea that like beauty isn't a thing or everyone's beautiful or things like that. And this is just really a different kind of a strategy. It still acknowledges that beauty and strength are something.
Yeah,
it's just
that's a good point.
Over it, which is a different point.
That's a really good point, right? That this is not the strategy of deny that these things have value and recognize what the value is, like the example you gave of the imahos, or let's say like if you're a really good craftsman and realizing that, oh, if I use my craft to make the Mishkan, it's everything having its proper place and not downplaying them. And I think the downplaying them is really destined to fail. Like, again, in this society where we say, oh, everyone's beautiful. Yeah, right. Like, yeah, it's true that everyone can be appreciated as having beauty, but everyone realizes everyone has standards of beauty, whether they're personal or societal, and you're going to impose those standards no matter what. It's true that we can maybe get body positivity and like, and have a broader spectrum of appreciating what is beautiful, but everyone is going to have like standards of beauty within what is accepted. And so as opposed to trying to deny that, then just recognize its place and be thankful and realize where it came from and realize all the stuff about how it could be taken away. I think that's the more realistic approach. Okay. Usually we end by summarizing the takeaways, but frankly, I don't have the energy to do that. So let us end here, and we'll probably do a summary of the takeaways as a recap next time, B'li. And no shiur next week or the week after that. So we'll have plenty of time to think about this some more, and we will need a recap. Yeah, thanks for coming and have a good Shabbos.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.